Hello. Hello, everyone. We're just about to start. So my name's Campbell, and I'm a site reliability engineer for a company called Wipro. And I help our clients move their workloads into Google Cloud Platform. So I'm super happy today to be here in Munich, and I'm going to be sharing some of my experiences with diversity and inclusion in technology. So a little about me. I'm a London-based software engineer. I'm founder of a meetup called London SRE, and I'm co-organizer for GDG London. I'm also a GDE, Google Developer Expert, specializing in cloud. I've worked in technology for 20 years, and then outside of technology, I love spending my personal life with my daughter, and also playing games and sport. And the image of me there is at Google Next 2019 in San Francisco. So the topics for today is my journey into software engineering, my experience with diversity and inclusion in technology, and then opportunities to make a positive change. So let's start with my journey into software engineering. Being born. So my mother is English and Welsh, and my father is Jamaican. My first name is of Indian origin, and my surname comes from Scotland. Jamaica was a British colony, if you don't know, and I have a long history with the United Kingdom. So I was born in 1980, and I grew up in a small town. It's called Leeds in the north of England. It's very multicultural, but I encountered a lot of racism when I was growing up. And this is where my journey really started, games consoles. We've got a few good ones outside, right? My game console of choice was the Nintendo Entertainment System, and another piece of hardware called the Games Genie. And then through these devices, I gained a peek into game design, software engineering, and then essentially the inner working of games. And then playing games as a young child, I never thought I'd be working in the tech industry today. So if we fast forward to the present day, for the majority of my adult life, I've lived and I've worked in London. And it's a familiar story in that I've moved to a large city for more opportunities in life. And when you live in a city of any size, it's not uncommon to have a friend or work with someone that speaks a different language, they're a different ethnicity, or they're a different gender. And as the world becomes smaller, this will only increase due to increased travel. And then we have social media apps such as Instagram, Facebook, and such. And the picture to the left is from the World Reimagined project. It's Black History Month in the UK at the current time. And this is a UK art project, and it aims to educate how we understand the transatlantic trade in enslaved Africans. So we're going to move into the main part of my session, and we're going to walk through some of my experiences that stand out with respect to diversity and inclusion. And I hope that they will inspire you to think about D&I when you're building teams and when you're writing code. So we're going to start here. It's a familiar graphic that I'm sure we've seen in one shape or another. And words have been said to shape our perception of reality. The words that we choose, they all have different meanings depending on the context and the languages that we speak. So I've chosen 3 words from the selection above that stand out to me. And they're powerful tools when we're talking about these topics. So we have diversity, so including or involving people from a range of different social and ethnic backgrounds, different genders, different religions, etc. Then we have belonging, so the feeling of being comfortable, and that's in a particular situation with a particular group of people, and then feeling that you're a full member of the group. And then we have inclusion, so including somebody or the feeling of being included. As I work in DevOps and SRE, breaking down silos and collaboration is key, but you need the leadership's buy-in to really succeed and make it feel like it's all of us. So it's been said there's 2 main buckets for diversity. We have the business case and the social justice case. On the business case, businesses are being more active in the conversation. They're working harder to improve opportunities for underrepresented groups. And they're all providing more internal training to address these. And they're also tackling the tough subject of racism. And then on the social justice case, and this is partly due to the increased awareness through groups like Black Lives Matter, we've seen an increase in programs and volunteer-based groups, and they're shining a light on the ways that diversity can affect us all in our communities, in our jobs, and in our teams. There's also more people like me, and we're talking about our experiences to provide insights, And that's in the aim to kind of provide solutions and tackle underrepresentation across the board. Both of these buckets are required to challenge the misconceptions, and it's by working together on different aspects of the problem. So let's have a look at the business influence on diversity and inclusion, and we'll start here. On average, we spend a third of our lives at work. And I used to think I spent a third of my life waiting on downloads, right? It's true. But it's a thought-provoking statistic. And in my opinion, the workplace is one of the best places to start tackling this problem, diversity and inclusion. And then secondly, customers come from a diverse user base. So businesses, they're going to attract more customers, more users, if they have a varied workforce. We live in a world with a global economy. We have sales platforms such as eBay, Amazon. So it's easy for an individual or any size company to sell their products worldwide. And then another thing, reports have also shown that having a diverse workforce, it leads to better productivity. So it's a win-win situation for everyone. So let's talk about my first job in technology. So I worked in tech, in education for 10 years, and that was across a variety of schools, community schools, academies, free schools, paid schools, you name it, I worked in loads. But a substantial amount of these were in areas of the city with large immigrant communities and of low wealth. It was during this time I started to see the disparity in access to technology across the capital, meaning London. The UK is great in that it has a free education system, but this comes at a cost. And depending on the schools, the boroughs that the schools were in, some schools had really good IT equipment and some had really bad. For the teachers, it was hard to teach on. For the users, essentially the pupils, it was difficult and frustrating to learn on. And as for us as IT consultants, it was hard to keep the systems in good working order. So I'm going to draw your attention to this slide, which is discussing fuel poverty. And I'm going to show you how this ties into education. So the different areas are the different boroughs in London. The lighter colors shows the lowest proportion of fuel poverty, and then the darker areas, that shows the highest proportion of fuel poverty. So I worked in more than 50 schools across these boroughs. And I raised the point of fuel poverty because this shows the differences in people's financial situation and their social class, their socioeconomic status. What you'll find is that people in the most deprived neighborhoods, they tend to be disadvantaged across multiple aspects of their lives. And if you were to search for the richest cities in the world, London usually comes up in the top 10. So this graphic here, it shows you the disparity between wealth distribution. If you're a family or parents trying to support your children, you're struggling to pay for food and energy, it's going to be hard for you to buy suitable equipment for your children. And that brings us here. So whilst I was working in schools across the boroughs that we just saw, Google was the first technology company that I encountered that was offering free enterprise-level software for free for the masses. This was by providing schools free access to Google Apps, which is now Google Apps for Education. In the present day, this may seem really trivial, but this was 10 years ago, and it was an enabler for so many young people, and it offered them many opportunities. Electronic communications, a powerful suite of office applications, and an email address for life. So at a similar time, schools were being supplied with iPads at reduced rates for the pupils. So the teachers were generally keen on this. It was easier for the young pupils to launch an app from an application without having to learn how to master a keyboard and mouse. So it was really good to get them into tech at a young age. So why were these two programs important for diversity and inclusion? Equal opportunities. And we'll start here, number one. It enabled people, essentially the young pupils, equal access to technology, and it provided them with good opportunities to learn. And then the second point, schools are a great place to start, as children do not always have access to computers at home, believe it or not. Since these two programs were launched, they've gone from strength to strength, and it really shows that it was a good investment. So we have Chromebooks are now used by over 30 million students and educators worldwide. And then in the UK, there's a phrase called one iPad per pupil. And in around 7% of primary schools and secondary schools, iPads are used daily. So these programs are really going from strength to strength, and they're enabling young people to get into tech and be the developers of the future. So whilst working in education, I learned a great deal about local cultures, and you can do the same. Maybe not in schools, but in the companies and the teams and the communities that you're a part of. Spend a little time getting to know someone or speak to someone that you might not otherwise have spoken to before. During the breaks today, why not speak to somebody new at Google Next? So my first experience working for an organization that actively celebrates diversity and inclusion was at the Art Centre on the River Thames. I was brought in as an infrastructure engineer, and we was helping lift and shift, well, do a bit of modernization as well, but move their infrastructure into cloud. It's the fourth most visited attraction in the UK, and it has more than 4 million visitors. It has 13,500 and 250 teachers take part in your learning activities across the year. I volunteered my time, and I was working with the education team, and we was upskilling young people and adults in performing arts. And this was via creative workshops. We taught them editorial skills, photography, and visual effects. And then lastly, 40% of the events are free. And this addresses some of the economic and the social factors that can impede young people from having access to arts and the technology that surrounds it. It's very expensive working in performing arts with some of the software and hardware, and we was providing access to people to get really engaged and start off. So top 10%, a really great statistic. So prior to the epidemic, the South Bank Centre's representation of workforce was from people with proclaimed disabilities, different races, different genders, people of all ages. And this put the South Bank Centre in the top 10% of institutions with representation from the following groups. It was really great to be a part of, and all the staff was really happy to be there, and the visitors really embraced that as well. So stepping into the corporate world. So when I moved away from education, for me personally, it was a scary prospect. The business sector is far more fast-paced, there's different expectations, and the professional landscape in offices is generally less diverse when it comes to seeing people like me. And I really felt that when I was working in engineering. And what I mean is, it instantly felt less multicultural. Also from working in schools where the majority of staff are women, it was an instant shock to the system to now see walking around the office that the majority of staff were now men. Unlike school staff rooms as well, there was no cakes and treats at lunchtime. And who doesn't like a good cake, right? So this slide here, this takes us back to the business bucket for inclusion. So Reboot is a network of senior professionals, and they work together to maintain a dialogue on race relations and equality in the UK workplace. They have a particular focus on the financial services. It's important to remember with reports like this that they exist across all industries in the UK, but this one highlights a few key things. So in this report, some of the topics that were covered were careers and progression, discrimination at the workplace, recruitment, representation, pay, and ethnic minority self-censorship. So I'd like you to have a look at the key below. It shows people from different ethnic groups and some of the questions that they were asked. Some of the questions included, do you feel that you're able to be yourself at work? And do you feel you need to change aspects of your behavior in order to fit in? I'd like you to have a look at the table and just spend a few moments to have a look at one of the questions. If you were asked in your team, in your company, what would your answer be? You don't need to say it, but just think, how would you respond to a survey like this? So now we're going to move on to opportunities to make a positive change. We've looked at some of the ways that companies are investing in education and how they're looking internally to address some of the problems and concerns. Now we're going to have a look at some of the cool initiatives that exist here in the Google ecosystem, and they enable and they encourage us to make a change in the technology sector and beyond. So we start with Women Tech Makers. This is a great program. This provides visibility, a community, and resources for women that are working in technology. It addresses some of the challenges that women face at work, and some of them are representation of women, women bosses, the gender pay gap, sexual harassment, and pregnancy discrimination. It's a really great program. It has over 1,000 ambassadors and over 81,000 members. It's a really great initiative. If you haven't joined one of the sessions, I highly recommend that you do. They're really insightful. And what I've seen in my experience is that some of the ambassadors actually run these sessions at the companies that they work in, and it really makes a good impact. We also have one of my favorites, Google Developer Groups, GDG. So they're based on three great pillars: connect, learn, and grow. And Google Developer Groups are passionate in their community, and they're dedicated to helping others learn and grow. There's GDGs all over the world, and they host events of various types on a wide range of various technical topics. I find them really good because they're locally based, and they address the needs of the immediate community. You can join one. If there's one in your town, have a look and sign up. If there isn't one, you can always start one. It only takes 1 or 2 developers, and you can create one where you live. If you're based in Munich, you'll be happy to know there's one right here, and they've got a few events coming up soon, so show your support. We also have Google Developer Experts, GDEs, and they're based on the same 3 pillars. They're tech enthusiasts from around the world, and they're skilled in Google technologies, actively sharing their knowledge through workshops, talks like this, and creating online content. There's also a program called the Road to GDE, and this is geared towards developers from historically underrepresented groups. And the aim of that program is to support them on their path to hopefully becoming a GDE, and it's really great. We also have Building for Everyone. So these are new events and resources, and these have the goal of educating developers to implement accessibility best practices into their products and raise knowledge about accessibility inclusion via accessibility guidelines and tools. So diversity and inclusion, it means everyone, and everyone needs to feel valued. A large number of the people in the world, they have disabilities, some that they know about, some that they don't know about, and some people have disabilities that they're afraid to share for various reasons. As developers, when we're creating cool apps or creating cool services, we want everybody to be able to use and enjoy them, and these events address just that. So I'm approaching my end of my session. It's important to know that this is an ongoing conversation. The groups that I've mentioned, they all have really good merit individually, but it's collectively that we're going to make the biggest impact. And that's through collaboration between individuals, the different communities that we've just been discussing. And then we can start to address some of the root causes, and we can create solutions so that everybody feels included. There's a short break now. The next sessions will start at 2, both here in the ballroom. The session here is track 1, check your security posture. And then the session in the ballroom is track 2, building a serverless event-driven web app in under 10 minutes. Thank you for joining me, and I'll be outside if you'd like to have a chat. Thank you.